Welcome to another edition of Professor Speaks. Today we're going to talk about why generic prices keep increasing. But before I get to that, I'd like to remind you to hit like, subscribe, and hit the little bell for notifications. Hello and welcome to another edition of Professor Speaks. My name is Alex Hernandez. Alongside me as always is Dr. Craig Stern. And we hope you guys are having a nice summer. But now we're going to talk about generic prices. I know all of you are excited about that. So generic prices, if you look at the trends, they seem to keep going up. So I'm sure a lot of people at home are wondering, like those that get prescription meds, I'm sure it's a large portion of you. But those who get prescription meds are always looking for the cheapest price, and cheapest price tends to go towards the generic side. So why are the generic prices increasing?
Yeah, let me just back up for 1 minute. This came up to a degree because I wrote in Pharmacy Benefit News about prices stabilizing based on what wholesalers were saying was going to happen with prices over the longer term. But backing up, generic drugs are drugs that are off patent, meaning the branded drug is no longer the only product being made and sold. And it may be made by one manufacturer or 8, 10, 20 manufacturers or whatever. So there is a difference in cost between the different manufacturers who are making the drug. And it's also fair to say that this is an international market because the largest manufacturer of generic drugs is Teva. They're from Israel. The second largest one is Middlemen. They're from West Virginia, but also have links to Ireland. And the largest manufacturer of branded raw materials is in India. So effectively, this is an international market, and what happens with raw materials everywhere also affects it. Now, to your question, the answer is that there's been a huge amount of consolidation going on in the industry, where Teva has bought different generic manufacturers, Middlemen has bought generic manufacturers, and so have several of the branded manufacturers. In order to pay for those consolidations, they have taken these generics and they have steadily increased the price on them. So it certainly helps their stock prices, but to the individual who's trying to buy it, the base price of the drug has been going up. What we wrote about was that hopefully the trend, meaning getting bigger and bigger and bigger, would kind of level out. And that was from the drug wholesalers. But either way, when the base cost is high, that becomes an affordability problem, and then people are complaining about the cost of drugs. Even my own sister called me to bring that out about what was written.
I'm sure when you're working in the drug industry, they go, "Why are my prices so high?" But just based off of what Dr. Stern was saying, he wrote a PBM, and we'll go ahead and put that on the message or the commentary below. And there'll be a link there so you can go and read that. But also, you also mentioned in this consolidation, you also said the baseline. I caught the quotes on it. So when you say to pay for the drug, well, what does that exactly mean when you're just buying up wholesalers? You're buying up the wholesalers, and then in order to break even, you raise the price of the drug?
Well, it's not buying the wholesalers, it's buying other generic manufacturers. So as I said, it could be made by one, it could be made by 20 or more different manufacturers. But when either branded manufacturers or generic manufacturers start gobbling up and effectively buying these generic manufacturers in order to pay for it, they begin to raise the price of the drug. Now, they would argue that it's not them. There is a constant argument going out in the media today, and we're not taking a side about it. We're just reflecting something that's very well known in the media, and that is the manufacturers are saying, this isn't our problem. We are keeping the drug at a standard cost, but the middlemen, the pharmacy benefit managers, are coming in and they're trying to take more of the money. That's clearly true in rebates for brands, but it's also true because in the maximum allowable cost list, the maximum cost that a health plan will pay for a given drug, whether it's made by 1 or 20 manufacturers, they also have a spread, meaning that the plan pays one fee, but they pay the pharmacy another fee, and they keep the difference. So there is an argument going on as to whoever's right, but everybody is pointing the finger at everybody else. And it's probably true that everybody has a piece of this.
Of course.
Where they're doing it. And the drug wholesalers also have a piece of it where they're also getting a fee for what goes on. So every little part, as the stream goes by, everybody's putting in their ladle and everybody's taking money out.
Right. So when you also mentioned all this consolidation that's been happening, has it been just happening at a higher rate? Like, was it all volume at first, but now it's going to start to taper off, or is it?
Well, the argument right now is from the major wholesalers, from McKesson, from Bergen, etc., is that it is beginning to taper off. And part of it has to deal with the emphasis on drug costs that's going on across the industry as well as in politics. So it's a political problem as well as a affordability problem. And there's also the issue that the companies are realizing that they can't just raise the price of anything. Where Martin Shkreli and others took these very, abstruse drugs and raised the prices several $100%, and that was considered to be acceptable. The game has always been played that if a drug wasn't used very much, that they would raise the price, even if it was generic. On the other hand, what's happening today is that many of them are increasing the price, not for some abstruse drug that is rarely used, but for common drugs. And as a result of that, everybody is feeling it hit their pocketbook.
Common necessary drugs.
Common necessary drugs as where it hits your pocketbook. And it's happening with benzodiazepines. It's happening with regular drugs that you take for hypertension, diabetes for sure. The prices of insulin have gone up significantly. So in that regard, it's being felt now across the entire industry and across people who take drugs for multiple indications. And so everybody sees it.
So you're saying some of this social outrage that has been coming towards manufacturers seems to be helping with convincing these manufacturers to bring the price down a little
to a degree, but at the same time, many of them have still increased prices. And then they respond when there's an outrage over a given price that goes on. We're dealing with a fundamental problem, and it's always been the price of the drug has been whatever it is and whether it's affordable. Affordability has not been a problem. 10 years ago, you didn't argue about that. But today, the base price of the drug has come up to where the point is that even if the trend in price was relatively flat, if they only increased it 7 or 9% a year, it's still unaffordable. And now people are complaining that it's unaffordable at any price. And what do we have to do in order to address it? And clearly, the insurance companies, the health plans have to pay that. The employers have to pay that. Any funds that are run by unions and otherwise, they have to pay that. The federal government has to pay it. The state governments have to pay it. So now everybody is involved and has to deal with this price and affordability problem, and how do you address it? Just taking a sledgehammer to it and saying we're going to stop price increases is just relatively...
doesn't really make sense.
Well, it does make sense in the problem that soon half of all of this drug industry is going to be specialty drugs, these high-priced drugs that cost $1,500 a dose or otherwise. Those pricing, it's already having problems where it's not affordable. Drugs for hepatitis C were at $84,000, $85,000. Drugs for cystic fibrosis for kids, $250,000. These are unaffordable at any range.
Soon they're going to have special loan programs in order for you to take these.
We've written about it. There's all kinds of things that are there and different options that we've tried to give people for how you do it. Because you're now beginning to look at drugs and thinking, I buy a house, I buy a car, I buy a drug, and I now have to start looking at the financing options of what I have to do that, if in fact I could afford it. If I can't afford it, then the question is do I do without?
You're going to look at a drug and you're going to say, now sell my house, sell my car, and then maybe a baby or two.
Well, you might sell the baby.
Give you a good price there. I'm just kidding. But when we talk about price, I mean, because the whole focus on this topic is about generic and specifically generic drugs and the prices. Who controls it really? Because we can say manufacturers control price, but not all the times.
Yeah, that's part of this argument I was talking about.
Yeah.
Where manufacturers are saying, we're trying to keep the price low.
Mm-hmm.
The PBMs are coming in and saying, no, we have to get our share of this, whether it's in rebates or whether it's in how we're going to deal with the pricing to deal with the spread, or whether it's wholesalers taking their piece out of it.
And there are some states that try to control costs.
And there are states that try and control costs. What has happened in general is that states, certainly Medicare for the federal government and most insurance companies, have what they call maximum allowable cost pricing.
Right.
So for a given drug, there's a price. It may be made by multiple manufacturers. Some may be low, some may be high, some may be in the middle, but the maximum price is going to be based on whatever that price is,
right,
which is usually on the low end, not on the high end.
Right.
When they do that, they're saying the ceiling price is this. This is all we're going to pay. So it disincentivizes pharmacies and everyone else from offering a lower cost drug,
mm-hmm,
because they know they're going to be paid at a given MAC price, presuming that they know what that price is. And now there's several states, including California, that have mandated transparency so that the pharmacies know what the cost is. It's a common ongoing debate. It's an ongoing debate across health plans and PBMs and otherwise. Bottom line is that everybody's trying to figure out what the cost is, mm-hmm, and then determining this.
And just a side note, we've done our part with the transparency. We've designed our own MAC list as well for several of our clients. And
we have, because they want complete transparency.
You need transparency in order to see who's going to get paid what and how much a drug really costs.
Right, and putting it up on the web and making sure everybody knows what it is. Mm-hmm. People say that it is, but here in this particular case, the savings go to the plan or insurer or the company or otherwise so that they can then pass it on to their people.
Right.
That's the fundamental issue about what goes on. And by the way, mm-hmm, there's some new legislation now in the Senate that approved for gag clauses to be removed, where pharmacies can tell patients. In the past, they could not tell a patient. Mm-hmm. But they're going to be able to tell a patient that, yes, you have insurance, and yes, your copay or your cost for that drug will be X, but there's a much cheaper drug, and if you pay cash, you can get that drug. So it may be less than their copay, or if they have to pay a larger portion or even the total cost of the drug, there may be a lesser cost, and if they pay cash, they can get that. So they're beginning to remove the gag clauses that stop that.
How does that help the patient, though? If you say your insurance covers it, and your copay is really small, but I mean, how would a patient know to choose between one drug or the other?
Well, let's just say, for argument's sake, that the copay for a generic drug is $10.
Right.
So you get a generic drug, your limit to how much you pay is $10. Well, and presuming it's on the formulary.
Correct.
That limit is $10, and if the gag clause then is removed, the pharmacy can say, your copay is $10, but we have a generic for $6. Same mm-hmm, drug, same strength, same everything, just a different manufacturer. So you'll pay $6, not $10. You'll save yourself $4. That's one option of what to do.
Okay. Well, that is, it makes sense of why was that a rule in the first place. No. But anyways, what can the listener do in order to help kind of combat these drug price increases, or like maybe send a letter to a manufacturer or something?
Well, clearly they need to let their legislators know, whether it's Congress or the Senate, know that they're concerned about drug prices and they want them to reflect their needs with whatever they're doing with regard to pricing. That's issue one. Issue two is they need to be questioning their pharmacists. Are there cheaper options so I don't have to pay as much?
Right.
If the drug is not on formulary and they have to pay for it, then clearly they want to ask everyone. There are multiple websites, GoodRx and others, that they can compare how much it costs among different pharmacies and different chains. Some of them are well-known we're not promoting anybody, but some like Costco promotes that they cost $1 over cost, whatever that is. Certainly Walmart has similar kinds of things. Perhaps Amazon will have some similar kinds of things, as will all of the chains and some of the independents that are matching costs. So at the end of the day, they need to ask in order to try and find out what else is there and what are my options. And if one pharmacy says that, then perhaps they should be asking someone else and trying to get more than one opinion.
Right. So take home today, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And don't feel like you're tied down to one pharmacy. You should be able to look and shop your drug at every pharmacy. So and we'll also put up the website GoodRx that Dr. Stern mentioned. And that's it for today. Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Stern. And we will be back next week with a brand new topic. Make sure you visit ProPharmaConsultants.com. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and hit the little bell for notifications.